Hello and welcome to a special episode of Astro Live. I am your host, Alex Harper, and I am joined by the one and only SJ Anderson. Hey, SJ, how you doing?
Hey Alex, what's up? Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Yeah, it's great
Love
to
that
be with you
music.
too.
Love
Oh
the music,
yeah.
man. I was like
My
dancing
friend
to that.
made
It's
that
really cool.
track actually. My best friend made that song. Yeah, it's a
Oh,
sample. Yeah, it's one of his.
it took
So
me
yeah,
right in,
royalty
and it
free
got.
music because it's my best friend's music.
I think it's the
um,
energy I needed to kind of get ready here for this chat. So perfect, yeah. And that graphic, man,
yeah.
where did that come from? That's a really nice graphic, yeah.
Oh yeah. One of my followers is a graphic designer, and he got a reading from me, and then I ended up hiring him to create the graphic. So yeah, really cool. Yeah. Anyway, bit of housekeeping. Fortunately, Fred is unable to join us today, so it's just going to be me and SJ, but that's okay. Um, I think most of my audience is going to be familiar with SJ Anderson, but just in case you're not, he's an astrologer. He's been in the astrology game for several years now. I started actually following you back in the, I don't know, probably like 2019, 2020, somewhere in there. And I remember you kind of stuck out to me because I was learning astrology at the time. I was studying it a lot. And you were one of the few astrologers on Twitter that when I would comment from an anon account under your posts and ask you a question or ask to be pointed in the right direction, you would actually take the time to respond to me and point me in the right direction. And I just want to thank you for that and give you props for that because that is, that's inspired me. And that's now that I am in this, I try to take the time when people reach out to me and message me or comment, ask for clarification, wanted to get pointed in the right direction. I always try to do that, and it's because of people like you that I do that. So thank you for that, and for doing your part to keep the astrological tradition going. Um, yeah.
Thanks, man. Well, I just want to say, I mean, I've looked back on those times, and I had a lot more time and willingness to do that. You're saying that to me, and I'm like, ooh, because I've kind of pivoted. I'm less available right now. I got off of X Twitter, as you know, and part of it was for the interaction there. It's just such a heavy interactive platform that is so demanding to kind of participate in it. And but anyhow,
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying
No,
that because
I'm
I
feeling that pressure myself now. Now that it's like it's taking me 2 weeks to get back to people sometimes now.
yeah
So it's like, yeah, when the volume increases,
yeah.
it does increase. But it's always good to try and do what you can.
This
So
is the spirit
um,
of it. Just to say, can I say the spirit of that
yes,
is something I try to embody, even if it's not being able to answer every comment or go line by line as much these days. It's just, I think as astrologers, even having a live conversation like this, I mean, we're here to kind of share. This is sharing, and I think there's the idea, the spirit of kind of giving or sharing our knowledge, or we can kind of capture that in different ways with less time or with more on our plate. So anyhow, great to be with you. Excited about all this, and I'm glad we can kind of frame it that way because that's really what we're trying to do, isn't it? Like give people a heads up,
yes.
talk about things that people are interested in or is relevant to their lives, or augment the news, which is going to be such a big thing as it just takes over our screens, right? We're trying to help with that. So
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I've got a little astrology rabbit hole for us to go down, and then we can discuss, kind of how that fits into the current world events and geopolitics of the moment. So just to dive right into that. So when you're in normal non-astrology world, right? When we talk about the seasons, typically people think of four seasons, right? Spring, summer, fall, winter. However, astrologically, you can break it down into 8 seasons. Now, this is from the kind of ancient Gaelic, right? So, everyone's familiar with Samhain, right? Like that's the most popular one of the Gaelic holidays on October 31st. But you see that the solstices and equinoxes are represented here, as well as the midpoints between them, right? So this is important astrologically because each of these periods here, each of these 8 periods, will get a 15-day orb of intensification of mundane events, right? So that means that 120 days out of the 365 are bookmarked by this technique as being more important, where events that happen during these time periods are going to be more significant than events that happen during the rest of the time of the year. So using this, we can narrow down, excluding eclipses. Eclipses have to be considered separately, but using this technique, we can narrow down the important days of the year down from 365 to 120, which is helpful for paring it down because there's a lot of astrology to look at. And if you don't know where to look first, it can be overwhelming. So how do we determine the 15-day period that's relevant, right? Well, we see here that the yellow lines represent the equinoxes and solstices, and the red lines represent the midpoints. We're currently right here, where the sun is in the middle of Aquarius in the midpoint. So this is in-bulk season, and this is going to be a time of intensification. So how do we know when the 15-day period starts? Well, if we turn to the Book of the Stars by Raphael, which is a pseudonym of Robert Cross Smith, we will see that he says, it is necessary in every quarter to observe, as above directed, the new or full moon, which may happen before the period of the sun's transit through either tropical or equinoctial point, whichever it may be. So that means that when the sun is about to go through an equinox, a solstice, or the midpoint between the equinox and the solstice, we need to find the nearest syzygy, either new or full moon, and then look at the quarter moons that kind of wrap around it, right? So this is what gives us the 15-day orb, right? So in-bulk is on February 1st this year. So that means that the period of time that's relevant that we want to look at starts January 25th, and it peaks February 1, and then it ends February 8th. So according to the technique, what you're supposed to do is once you've identified that 15-day period, then you're supposed to look at the transits that occur during that period and the alignments that happen, and that these are going to be basically especially important or especially significant and will have kind of a greater effect than they otherwise would if they were happening during a time that's not one of these 15-day periods around the equinoxes, solstices, or midpoints, right? And so this means that anything that happens during this 15-day window, the effect is going to be amplified, right? So what transits do we have going on during this period? Well, on January 26th, Neptune changes signs. Everyone's been talking about Neptune going into Aries and how this could, represent a new kind of like war chic, or like war as some kind of style, or as capturing the imagination, right? Like war heroes, right? So Neptune and Aries, there's been a lot said about that because Neptune is the planet of, dreams, the ether realm, the collective, the all, and Aries is the sign of the individual, the warrior, conflict. So
Can I jump in,
yeah, go
Alex?
ahead.
You
Yes.
said before it'd be okay if I were to interject here.
Yes.
Just on this point,
Interrupt me, please.
okay. I really want to interject on this point because I think folks being aware of the rush to war, these are kind of Neptune and Aries risks or keywords. The idea that, like you say, the imagination collective, right? Neptune as a collective planet, the collective imagination captured and deployed in service of war. If this is what happens over the next, and this, remember, 14 years. So this is a long transit to be grappling with this theme and this idea, but we got to kind of be cautioned that, hey, we don't want to get lost in some kind of rush to war. I was alive, you were alive, I know, in a few wars in American history, but like the post 9/11 Bush years, which a lot of folks have assigned Trump as Bush 2.0 in the recent discourse because of some of the warlike tendencies he's exhibited. But the idea is that there's any war, there's going to be a Neptunian deployment, and to have Neptune in Aries right now for what whatever this war is going to be, it's just something that will help us navigate, knowing, hey, this is like delusion. You see that with Neptune as a key word, being deluded.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so deluded by war discourse is something that I think fits this Neptune in Aries, and it's something I want to frame it that way to protect us. But yeah.
Yes, and I agree with you, and I would also add on to that and say that I think that the Neptune in Aries is going to make this war, any war that happens during this time, there's going to be more protests and more objections from the populace than ever before, because the people do not see a reason to fight, and they are going to kind of instinctively know that Neptune's in Aries, that like we are being lied to, and that's why we're being taken into war right now. And so I think that even more than what we saw in 2003 with the protest against the Iraq War, I would expect there to be much bigger protests. If the United States gets involved in a conflict, I think the protests would far outstrip those protests that happened like 20 some years ago.
100%. And by the way, let's put a stub here, because I want to talk about this anti-war protest. There's a lot more that can go into what's relevant on that topic alone, but I don't want to derail the presentation. Let's maybe pick that up when we come back to the conversation phase. Is that okay? Because you're making a very important point about that. Extremely important point. So.
Okay. Well, yeah. Let's put a pin in that and come back to it.
Perfect.
So the other things I wanted to say was that also during this 15-day period that we've highlighted, we get Mars conjunct Pluto on January 27th. Now, Mars is the planet of war. Pluto is a planet associated with corruption, power dynamics, hidden things, scandals, right? Pluto is this. I liken Pluto to a lightning bolt, right? That's what the energy feels like to me. It's like a lightning bolt hitting a forest that's dry and causing a massive fire, right? That's Pluto. So, yeah, pretty ignitive energy. We also have Mercury and Venus conjoining. Now, this is a special conjunction of Mercury and Venus because it happens not only by longitude, but by declination. So declination is a measure of how far north or south the planet is of the ecliptic plane. And the significance of it is that if you were to actually observe these planets, which we can't because they're under the beams of the sun, but assuming we could, we would see that the planets are conjoined at the same latitude as well as longitude. So the planets would appear to be literally together instead of like conjunct and one is on top of the other, or one is north and one is south of the other. They're actually right together. However, this conjunction is taking place about 5 or so degrees away from the sun. So it is what's known as combust, meaning invisible to the naked eye. So we cannot observe without using modern telescopes this conjunction of Mercury and Venus. Now, why is that significant? Well, Mercury and Venus, when they conjoin, they often represent agreements being made, right? Things like this, peace talks, treaties, negotiations, things like this in the mundane realm. And so the fact that this conjunction is happening under the beams of the sun with all of this other malefic energy, you could interpret that as the ripping up of a peace treaty, right? The burning up of the agreement, right? That's one possible way to interpret these archetypes here. And then the last, transit that I wanted to highlight during this period is Uranus stationing direct, February 2 to 3. Uranus is likened to the god Prometheus, who is this rebellious figure that steals the fire of the gods, gives it to humans. Uranus is associated with unexpected things, electrical problems, infrastructure problems, just things going haywire, right? When Uranus is active, there's chaos and havoc, right? So this is quite a mix of energies that we've got playing here. Before I move on to the next section, is there anything else you wanted to add here, SJ?
I think I would just say eclipse season. There's several eclipse seasons that have been happening the last few years that I can think of, where it really does time big events. And I wish I had an example here today, but I mean, just think back to the eclipse season, and I go back to October 7th. That's now its own little phrase, October 7th. Ooh, but
Mm-hmm.
and not to, yeah, the horrible, but that was an eclipse season. That was the sun in Libra as the sun was about to be eclipsed. So on the 14th of October, and you see often eclipse seasons accelerate. This is what astrologers say. They bring the fated accelerations. And I think that this is all happening during an eclipse, which will take place on the 17th of February. I know it's not the exact zone that you're saying, 7 days on either side, but the sun will be in the sign and 15 degrees, within 15 degrees from the eclipse location. We have to include the eclipse accelerative layer to this whole moment in time. And not only that, the ruling planet by domicile of that eclipse will be Saturn in Aries, in the same degree as Neptune in Aries. So that whole conversation we just had, it's uniquely this eclipse that is Neptune in Aries eclipse, if you want to say it that way, because the domicile order of the solar eclipse is in the same degree as Neptune in Aries, Saturn in Aries. Does that make sense? You're following the kind of
Yeah.
technical connection there.
Yes.
Basically, guys, this is like a crazy intense time. It's, to put it
Yes.
simply,
Yes.
around themes of war, because it's Aries. Everything's flowing back to Aries. The other thing you have in this chart is that the Mars in Aquarius, a mutual reception with Saturn in Aries, and then therefore Neptune in Aries. You just wonder how much that is going to be supporting war. I mean, we're not war planners or war actors. I don't, I'm not, you're not, we're not, probably, I'm not hired by people that are running these operations or anything like that. But if I was, I might be saying, hey, this could be a time to maybe go for it if you have this kind of warlike
Yes.
Mars Saturn
Yes.
teaming here. So
Yes, if I was an evil astrologer working for the CIA or Mossad or something like that, I would be like, "Hey guys, here's your chance to really wreak some havoc if you want to." Or if I was working for Iran, either way, because I'm not sure who the aggressor is going to be, right? But I do think there will be an intensification around this time period. Now, the thing that you mentioned about the eclipse is important because if we go back with this technique, it's important to remember that this technique excludes the eclipses. So the eclipses should be considered separately from this technique. And so if they overlap or if they happen to go, one after the other, that's something significant that we could look at. I think there's a siren right outside my house going on right now. So hopefully that ends soon. But yeah, so, okay. So we've got all of these transits happening, right, that indicate, an increase in war, increase in violence, increase in tensions, right? But why am I saying that it's going to be Israel and Iran, right? Why couldn't there be war in some other part of the world, right? Now, now I could do the cop out thing and say, well, this is just looking at the news, this looks like the most likely venue.
that's what I was going to do.
But uh, astrologically speaking, we can take a look. So one thing I like to do is I like to look at the composite charts between leaders of different countries, right? So I used this with the Venezuela Maduro presentation. I've used it with other presentations. And basically what it is you take the composite chart of each of the leaders of the two countries. A composite chart takes the midpoints of all of the planets in each person's natal chart and then creates that as its own new chart, right? And so this is a way to see how the transits are going to affect a relationship between two people. Now, we don't have the birth time of Khomeini, but he is a double Aries. He's an Aries sun and Aries moon. And so because of that, I felt okay setting him for a sunrise birth time because that gives him Aries rising. And he has so much Aries energy in his chart that, because you can cast the chart, you can use the moon or the sun as a substitute ascendant if you want to, right? And you can derive houses that way. And so because he's a double Aries, I was like, all right, it's probably fine to just set it for sunrise and see what happens. And so the houses on this chart may not be exactly right, but the placements are. And that's really what we're concerned about. And so we see here this Mars-Pluto conjunction that I was talking about happens right on the composite Venus, right? So if this was a relationship between two lovers, right, and I was giving an astrology reading, I would be like, hey, you might want to look out for arguments and disagreements with your significant other around this time, right? But if we can extrapolate that into geopolitical relationship, then we can see that, this, if Venus represents peace and harmony, Mars and Pluto conjunct that composite Venus, that could be a disruption in the peace and harmony. And so this is January 27th. This is the day of the Mars-Pluto conjunction. It was one of the days I highlighted. The other day I wanted to highlight and look at the activation in the composite chart was February 2nd, the day of the full moon. And here we have the full moon activating the Pluto of their composite chart. So, and the full moon is also square, although wide orb, the composite Mars. And we still have Pluto and Mars on the composite Venus. It just, I don't know. And also Jupiter is conjunct the composite moon. So this chart is getting some activations. And I think that it's reasonable to suspect that I think that if there is a confrontation, it won't be the United States acting first. It will be a confrontation that starts between Iran and Israel, and then the United States gets dragged into it. That's kind of how I see it playing, because I did look at the composite for Khamenei and Trump, and there wasn't much activation around this time. So the Khamenei-Trump composite seems fine for this time, but there's heavy activation in the Netanyahu-Khamenei composite, which makes me think that there could be some intensification between Iran and Israel and the ongoing conflict there, and that this might heat up again during this time period. So that's my rationale and justification for why I'm making this prediction. What do you think, SJ?
Well, a few thoughts. You've got the Aquarian feature of the moment: Mars, Pluto in Aquarius, Mars in Aquarius. And this is high tech. The thing about the Iranian war tactics of the last few years, and particularly the 12-day war last summer, I mean, it's all about drones and missiles. Recently in the headlines, there was the blocking of Starlink. The big headline was that Iran was able to block Starlink. They were using Starlink send
I saw that. Yeah, that was
information into their provocateurs on the ground, right? These Western provocateurs that are likely there. And so I think we've got to be aware of how high tech this war is. And even with the information flows, I mean, my social media feeds were flooded in recent weeks. You've probably seen where it's like people saying, I was being attacked. Like, if you weren't talking about this and now you're talking about this or that. I just think there's a lot of this kind of Aquarian nature of how warfare is being fought, even literally with drones and internet connections, and then even with the information flows in terms of how these actions will be couched and sold to the public. So I'm just set up for that, to kind of be on my guard and kind of question as much as I need to in Aquarian style. In terms of the trigger, I just want to say the moons, I've been talking about this recently, Russia, Ukraine, China and America, and the charts that we like to use, the most popular charts for each of those countries, all have Aquarius moons. And some of those are in those early degrees. And I think for me, the Iran-Israel situation, which also I think people should be aware of, the current discourse around this is not Israel versus Iran. Actually, the headlines were that Israel decides not to participate. And instead, they're claiming that they're going to send the attack dog, the United States, actually, that it's behind the scenes. Bibi, he came to the White House, goading Trump to do the attack. And that's how it's being sold currently in the discourse, is that America is going to decide to attack independent of Israel, because Trump has decided, using his new way he's thinking about himself is that I can basically do whatever I want. Might makes right. The Maduro
Yeah.
model, it's the same
Yeah.
justification. And so I'm looking at it more of like an America versus Iran, at least in terms of this local discourse of how it's what we're going into it as. Of course, we know this can change overnight if, like you say, Iran defensively says, oh, we're going to attack first. If they say that we have to defend by
Yeah.
attacking and they send missiles in Tel Aviv, of course it becomes Iran, Israel.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I guess a long way of all saying, America's moon and that Aquarian Mars trigger of the American moon, that just, if this ends up being more of an America attacks Iran to keep the world safe kind of thing, and that's how this
Right.
triggers, I think that's
Yeah.
likely. And then just the cascade effect of that, because everything I'm reading is that China, you saw the recent story where they closed the airspace and then there was Chinese
Hmm.
planes that came in. And a lot
Hmm.
of people were
Yes.
saying that's what stopped America from attacking then, because basically China may have delivered some weaponry. Some people were saying China delivered the blocking of the Starlink technology. But it feels like this is I guess, a powder keg that would trigger the great powers and the grand chessboard well beyond just a local Iran event here. And we have to be
Yes.
aware of that.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I think it's an interesting point. It could go either way. It could be America jumping in first, but I think that regardless, once the initial confrontation happens, it's going to drag a bunch of other people in. And another thing I would say to that point is that, I was following those news stories as well, but one thing I've noticed with Trump is that Trump likes to intentionally leak disinformation as a misdirection strategy, right? And so, he's now talking about all this stuff where he's going to invade Greenland, right? And this could be like the perfect cover to actually do something else. It's like a sleight of hand. Oh, pay attention over here, pay attention over here while I do this with my left hand over here, right? So that could be something. Um, I think it's I'm not sure how it's going to intensify, how it's going to play out, but I think that during this time period, we will see some kind of update to the story. I mean,
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's just the pressure is already building. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yes.
but once it happens, then there's going to be the inevitable backlash. And that's something we had put a pin in during my presentation that you wanted to come back to. So
Yeah.
maybe now's a good time to talk about what we think the response is going to be if the United States and Israel do get embroiled in conflict with Iran.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. This opens up so many threads, and we probably won't get to cover it all. But I want to just say, this moment, in my opinion, it's the context that this moment happens in against the backdrop of astrological cycles that are about to kick off here. So let me just lay out two or three cycles, and then I'll apply them quickly, and then we can come back. But one, Aquarius eclipse cycle, north and north node, but these Aquarius eclipses are ending in January 2028 with the final eclipse. So that's a new, fresh kickoff trigger. Remember, those moons of the great powers are in Aquarius. So to me, it feels like we have a new cycle of tension, or a cycle of new mundane events related to those great powers arriving here in February. Guess what I'm saying is I think this continues whatever is triggering, because that cycle is brand new now and extends for 2 years. It may be that we kick off new events, like, again, that Libra eclipse cycle in October 2023, which was the first eclipse in Libra of a cycle there. And that kicked off a whole series of, the devastation of Gaza at the hands of
Yes.
the Israelis, that kind of concluded with the final eclipse in Libra. I mean, I know, you can map it to that eclipse cycle, and it's almost like,
Yes.
hey, these eclipse cycles can time things where it really does map the cycle, the meat of the event. So there's that's kicking off. Two, Saturn in Aries, which kicks off now. Now we had the summer preview, but that summer preview included the 12-day war. And now we get Saturn in Aries returning on February 14th. It's almost like it wants to return. The Iran Israel stuff is, and that will last until 2028 April. And let me see, there was another one that I wanted to, the Uranus and Gemini, obviously. This is the big kind of the cat in the bag, the big cat in the bag, which is and we don't have to, everybody knows this, I think, but Uranus and Gemini, World War II, right? And the
And
creation
then the
of
Civil
Israel is Uranus
War.
and Gemini. You pull up the Israel creation chart, the one that the astrologers assign it, that's Uranus and Gemini.
Yes.
The Civil War, the Revolutionary War, Queen Anne's War was Neptune and Aries, which is warring in North America, but Neptune and Aries was a civil war in America. So, I mean, I guess, this idea that whatever is happening now, it just feels like another extension of the setup to these bigger events that the astrology is kind of promising around war that we are just building into right now. And I just think that context is extremely important. Now, there's the stuff we put a pin into. I'll come back to that. The anti-war. There's whole narratives and cycles around anti-war, and then there's the Mars retrograde cycle in Virgo, Leo, which we can come back to. But are you seeing that, Alex? I mean, these multiple cycles that are converging
Yes.
that are just kind of beginning here right now, and that might be more high risk for stuff to continue with what
Yeah,
may be triggered
yeah.
here.
I think that anything that starts right now is liable to like persist for some time, as you say, because if it happens at the start of these cycles, then it can play out over the course of that period. Now, going back to the Israel Gaza stuff, where uh, I believe it was around the time of the like a Saturn Mars conjunction that things really heated up, and then it lasted for like that whole 2 year period. I believe maybe I'm wrong. I don't. Maybe I'm
I'll get it
misspeaking.
up right
But
now. I'll get it
yeah,
up right
yeah.
now. I think it was Mars and Libra, if I recall. Yes, it was
Oh,
Mars and Saturn. The chart of October 7th has Mars and Libra. It was a
oh, okay.
it was a Mars South Lunar Node conjunction.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Right.
and Saturn was in early Pisces, but it definitely was a Mars thing, because that eclipse that happened on the 14th was near the degree of where Mars was. I mean, it was all like the last decan of Libra, both Mars
Yeah.
during the event, the South Node during the event, and then the eclipse that arrived with Mars having gone into Scorpio, but still in those like last degrees of Libra, which is, it's a cardinal sign. And a lot of what you looked at earlier was you're kind of talking about cardinal sign, that sets
Yes.
equinoxes and solstices. And, cardinal signs, there's no doubt about it that the cardinal triggers make great change in the reality. And you've gotten the midpoints then are like a harkening back to the cardinal trigger. I think this is a good place to mention this for everybody, is that the Saturn Neptune conjunction in 1953 was in Libra, cardinal sign. The
Hmm.
Saturn Neptune conjunction which happens in the 20th of February, right, or in this pocket you've laid out here, is in the cardinal sign Aries. And that's a whole nother feature of this kind of great shift that Saturn and Neptune can imply and trigger. It's in the cardinal trigger. And I think it tells us, even more importantly, like, hey, big changes could come. And the 1953 one saw the overthrow of Mossadegh, the democratically elected leader, newly
Yes.
elected leader of Iran, who wanted to say, hey, Iranian oil for the Iranians. British Petroleum said, hell no, hired the CIA to go throw them, and it worked. And then they installed their puppet. So, we've
Yeah.
seen that these cardinal triggers with Saturn and Neptune relate to Iran specifically in our history. And that's right in February. And this time you're saying, hey, you're feeling that this could go off here in February. I mean, yeah, there's it, high on the bingo card, Iran,
Yes.
Iran events, in February.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, I also think that it's interesting you point out that like these cycles occurring that are like the Saturn Neptune conjunction in 1953. Uh, it's interesting that, you know, we have also recently, the United States has taken action against another country that nationalized their oil reserves, right? And so, that kind of theme of regime change because of a socialist country nationalizing their oil resources and saying this belongs to the people. The United States like that belongs to global capital, not the people, right? And that could be another theme here that's recurring, right? This kind of like this resource grab, basically.
Yeah, and I think it also relates to the preparations for this larger conflict, because some of the geopolitical analysis I've been seeing in recent days and weeks is the Venezuelan oil is necessary to capture right now because it cuts China off. Those Venezuelan oil products were being sent to China cheap, I think. Iran is a supplier of China of oil. And so if you go into Iran and they drop the Strait of Hormuz, which people say is pretty much guaranteed, if this really blows up here and like we get into a new phase where it's, more kinetic war than it's been, that 12-day war was just kind of a surface thing, it appeared. But if we really get into what could be happening here, who controls the oil, and cutting off China from oil helps the United States against China or against Russia. And it's like a lot of this posturing is about who can get the oil, and I'm not even saying I agree with it's like US versus China ultimately, but a lot of geopolitical commentators do agree with that. That's their big read, that this is really about US versus China. Even Russia, Ukraine is about US versus China.
Yeah.
And, and so, yes, I think the idea of seizing the oil or stopping the Iranian production of oil could be some of the motivation here. And we got the Venezuelan. Now you cut off China's access to Iran by instigating a war there, and maybe that helps America get the chips or whatever the ultimate goal is in the U.S. versus China war. Controlling the American sphere of influence and keeping that going for another 100 years. Look, this is another thing. Can we shift now to the pin in it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, before we do that, I wanted to say briefly on the China subject that there is a lot of parallels right now historically between the United States and China and Great Britain and Germany in the lead up to World War One. Right. So in the lead up to World War One, Britain was the established empire. Germany was the upstart. There was a manufacturing war, an arms race for naval stuff, right? So this is like the nuclear arms race and then the AI arms race of today. We had the naval arms race in the lead up to World War One. And at the time, Germany was a very heavy manufacturing country. They're exporting a lot of things, just like China is now. Whereas Britain was this established empire and needed to import stuff. And so there's like similar geopolitical tensions that were going on between Germany and Britain in the lead up to World War One are occurring now between China and the United States. Just thought I would mention that as like a background.
Yeah, I think I like that because a lot of people, when you read about World War One, these theories about, well, what was really happening, why did it happen, what was the motivation? They'll say it was designed to crush Germany because of its threat to empire. You can't have a strong Germany; it's too strong. The industrial base. A lot of people have theories about the 20th century as the wars of the 20th century being a way to capture, neuter, and control and basically colonize Germany. And you see that in the context of Russia, Ukraine, with things like Nord Stream, or a lot of the discourse around how Germany is just a vassal of whether it's America or Britain or other, I think about it as Anglo-American. It's kind of combined, but that Anglo-American empire that they won World War II, they controlled Germany and probably still do, according to some commentators. And so if you think about, it's a way to, if China is going to be the threat that's rising, looking at everything that's going to happen in the context of a similar operation to kind of neuter, subdue, or stop China from being dominant, that would make sense to me if we're kind of just postulating on maybe the larger picture here, or the behind the scenes, the Mercury combust, right, of this moment. What's the hidden stuff that's really behind the scenes? I just don't. I'm skeptical. China's so powerful, aren't they?
No.
And they have all geography. Geography is destiny, and they're in Asia. China seems like they've really got an advantage with it.
They are ascendant right now. They're so ascendant.
Yeah. And Pluto and Aquarius on the moon of China. The rising sign in the Mao Declaration chart is Aquarius. It's a moon in the first in Aquarius when Mao is in China saying we have the new PRC, People's Republic. It just may be their time. And especially Saturn and Jupiter age of air conjunctions, the last time it happens is the rise of the Mongol Empire. This just may be China's 200 years. And I've lived in China. I never, you know, there's a lot to like, you know, I mean, we can get into like a China good, bad debate, but, you know, I'm kind of open that if there is more Chinese, you know, this one world that's emerging with the technology where we have like a interconnected reality, there's probably some benefits. Like they have trains there. I mean, I'm sure you've seen these memes. Like, why do they have the high speed trains, and why is my hometown destroyed? You know, there's something wrong there, right? And this is where I wanted to pivot it to, which is the domestic disturbance, domestic
Yes.
tension as part of the context of this moment. Because and let's see, what was it? We were talking, I forgot how I was going to get into that, but it's the Civil War resonance,
Mhm.
and we're talking about anti-war protests now. There was another link there, maybe it'll come back to me, but if you go to 1967, which is the year I'm greatly tapped into because of Saturn in Aries, Jupiter in Cancer Leo, and really the whole relationship between Saturn and Jupiter now kicks us back into the 1960s, and I've been tracing it. It was like literally, it was Saturn in Pisces, Jupiter in Gemini. The moment that arrived, and then at the end of Jupiter in Taurus, it's exactly the posture of when the anti-war protests in 1965 triggered major. And I woke up and I saw it was exactly the same with protests for Palestine on American camp. It became the battleground where
Yes.
they were
Yes.
arresting students. I mean, it was the same sit-ins. It was like exact echoes of the 1960s, but matching the Saturn and Jupiter cycle, Saturn Jupiter cycle. And so I do believe the anti-war stuff is just set to kick off even more. I mean, you can go read about 1967. We call it the Summer of Love, but it was also the 67. And then as the
Kent
trine,
State, or that was 68 maybe.
but
Yeah.
that's as the trine becomes the, was
Yeah.
it's not, is it quincux or no? I think,
Oh
I don't,
yeah.
these minor aspects, I don't
Yeah,
remember the
yeah.
name. It's not,
As it gets
it's
to
quincux, it's
100,
quincus.
yeah, yeah.
So as this trine becomes the quincux, and we get into 2027,
Mhm.
2028, and then it becomes the opposition. We're getting into like the dark, explosive, like the flower power stuff is now,
Yes.
and it could become, especially as we start talking about this context for like these later triggers, where, you know, crackdowns on anti-war processors. I fully expect that to happen. You know, digital dystopias around shutting down, banning people. You know, there are interests that have acquired TikTok and CBS News that some people say it's for the purpose of shutting down the spread of the anti-war discourse. And so, you know, my sense is that, yeah, that's a huge part of the moment that, you know, people, as you said at the beginning, I didn't think about it this way yet. I'm glad to hear you say that. Like the other side of Neptune and Aries is this, maybe it's like war delusion on all sides, like war, the passions of humanity, Neptune, get fully pulled into the war archetype
Yes.
one way or the
Yes.
other.
Yes.
And, you know, my view is that, yeah, this is like the great battle of America right now is this just, and it relates to ICE, right? I mean, that's happening now because it's the same interest. Like
Yeah.
the people that are going to attack Iran and say we have to do it are the same people that are sending ICE agents into, you know, churches or whatever. I don't know the latest one I saw, but I mean, I will never
Yeah.
defend that. That seems so insane, and that's going to trigger like that could be like a George Floyd thing, like a multiple greater. If
Yeah.
enough
Yeah.
people are like, "This is insane," we're going to fight back. I mean, it just feels very ripe for some kind of explosive trigger domestically, and it may be that this war is what is another component of what sets it off. If they're gonna, if people are gonna be like, why the fuck are you starting World War III? No, we don't buy it. Get the
Yeah.
fuck
Yeah. We
out of
don't
here.
need
Sorry,
this. We're
I'm
not.
dropping
This
f
is not.
bombs. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay,
No, this is after hours stream. Well, it's not. It's
okay.
usually after hours, but no, it's totally fine to swear. I agree with you. I think it's like it. I think a lot of people are not convinced of the need to fight, and they are going to be like, "Why are you doing this? Like, this is not. We don't need to do this. We don't need to kill each other, right?" And I think there's going to be resistance to it. I mean, now the other thing is that there may be this backlash because people are like, "All right, we're being attacked, but we got to
Yeah.
defend ourselves or die," right? So, you know,
Can I say this here? Because
Yes.
this is another layer that is really highly relevant, which is it's the counter. They call it the counter revolution. You'll see it in history. There's the revolutions, and then there's the counter revolutions.
Yes.
One of the classic examples is Pluto in Aquarius, Neptune in Aries in the 16th century, and this was the foundation of the Jesuit order in response to the Protestant Reformation.
Hmm.
And I feel like some of that's happening now because I was before Neptune entered Aquarius or Pluto entered Aquarius. I mean, I remember I had a tweet that I had written. It was like, okay, the Protestant Reformation, right? You resist the empire. The version of that was very clear. The empire is the Catholic Church. The counter is these, ideas is that people can read the Bible in the vernacular and have a direct relationship with God, and you don't need to pay indulgences, right? There's a resistance to a order that's brought in. That's the idea of the revolutionary Pluto in Aquarius. You go to the next cycle, and it's the King of England and the colony in America and the rights of man and the Enlightenment and the legal order or structures that are founded that are counter to monarchy effectively, and you might say the rise of nationalism or something, the nation state or something like this, Westphalian nationhood. But that's all the second Pluto Aquarius. It's like this time it's like, well, what is the orthodoxy? What is being brought in that's being resisted? And I was always like, it was a question mark. And I think having had Pluto in Aquarius now for a couple of years, one thing for me that's very high on the list is the global order post World War II. That was a stable order, which of
Yes.
course includes, the Zionist project as a core part of that. And it's not only about that, but you saw immediately with Pluto and Aquarius within the year, you kind of get this resistance on TikTok and other things, this kind of mass resistance to what that had been implementing in reality, and so. I guess I'm just a long way of saying I just feel like that these kind of the global geopolitical stability that has been brought into, which includes, the idea of Western democracies, including their outposts in the Middle East as what gets brought in. And now that's all going to be transformed here over the next period. And I feel like I forgot the other main reason why I was bringing this up. I didn't connect it back in the way that I wanted to, but I mean, that's also some of the context here that like, it could
Yeah.
be America, Pax Americana, which people start with the end of World War II. And now we have what is post Pax Americana. And I think these domestic disturbances, I think that's where I was connecting this back to. I mean, a lot of that's resistance to what people see as the government fighting wars, that are for other interests or other reasons. It's not for the benefit of the people. And if
Yes.
that's some of the protests that starts happening here, you're talking about maybe the eventual outcome of that being Pax Americana goes away or is diminished. You could have domestic disturbance that the ascendancy of China, and these are what commentators are saying too. I mean, I'm not just making this up. A lot of people are saying that we're in the last days of like the American Empire, and that,
Hmm.
your example of Britain and Germany, we know the result of that. It wasn't Germany, it was America that was the winner of those two wars. America is what emerged, and maybe
Yeah.
that's Britain because it's Anglo-American. But I just think that, the domestic disturbance side in the context of Pluto and Aquarius and how there's revolutions against the old guard, it really does set us up
Yeah.
here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially in February with everything triggering Pluto and Aquarius, to have
Yeah.
like, a war, like a bombing happen, and then people saying this is horse shit, like this is complete lies, and it's just like people. And then there's the schisms, right? People attack you on social media, like, you don't believe in the free people, you don't want to free people, what's wrong with you? Support dropping bombs, and you're like, fuck you.
Liberate the people with bombs. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to go free. It's like a replay of Bush. That's
Yeah.
it's like this is the exact justifications, the exact replays. So I am anyhow. I know that was a little bit of a convoluted thing, but just don't forget Pluto and Aquarius and how some of these structures are set to be transformed here over
Yes.
the next 20
Yes.
years. And that's some of the context of those structures being like American hard power and soft power, and Israeli, American, British hard power and soft power. Like some of that may, if there's a war in Iran and Russia and China back Iran, and the Anglo-American empire backs Israel, or attacks Iran with Israel as a part of that. What does this mean like in 2040? What will the world look like,
Well, so, a lot of people are predicting that there's going to be a multipolar world again, like we had during the Cold War. Now, what I would say as a counterpoint to that is that, okay, perhaps we could, but what would that actually look like in the modern day and era? And I think a multipolar world would actually kind of more resemble the New World Order, the one world government, where it is a few powers that have gotten together and have decided, all right, we're going to divide up the world. We're going to run this together, and we're going to have like some central body where we all can coordinate and plan. But then we're all going to have our little territories over the globe that we then administrate and oversee, right? And I think that, so ironically, the multipolar world could actually be the one world government, new world order type of thing that people have been saying is going to come into existence for the past, I don't know, 75 years or so.
Yeah. And I think this is where we get into conversations about other parts of this moment, not strictly geopolitical and war, but I mean, we have a major technological revolution that is the most important thing that's happened to humanity in thousands of years. Maybe, I don't want to be too much of a hype, but AI. And there's no doubt about it. I don't know, we haven't ever talked about this, but I mean, it's set to transform greatly, human potential and governance. Where I live, they have an AI minister. It's the first minister in the world where
Oh my God, really?
and they've trained models on the minister, and then each of the people of the ruling party has their liaison, an AI liaison to the AI minister. I forgot her name, but it's got a name, and
oh my
there's
gosh,
pictures.
that's crazy. I've not heard of this. I've got to look this up.
Yeah. And so, this is, it would naturally follow, especially if these AI models get really good and there's something like AGI. And I mean, not what they're going to tell us AGI is, but maybe if, it'll be hard to discern probably if this is just some government, hey, this is your AGI, listen to it. Or if it's really some new tech that's really a wise or advanced knowledge,
Yeah.
a location of knowledge. But what I would say is that is the backdrop here, where these governments might just say, all right, we need an external source. Let's bring AI in, and that can help it. You can type into AI. I've done it. I'm like, give me a solution for the Israel-Palestine conflict. Let's like a new constitution for the combined one state of Israel-Palestine or Palestine-Israel. And it'll write one, and it's really good, and it knows all the laws. And it has it all in its training. So you can get whole new like legal structures that could be drafted with the help of AI.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I do think, just to come back to the technological side, like if that sort of takes over, and China's got some of the best AI models, this AI arms race, but if somehow AI just becomes so potent that people, and you see it now, even like people get lost in social media, but that's increasingly blurred between AI and what is AI and what is social media. We know it's algorithm controlled. We know there's AI slop galore, in every niche. Like sometimes I'll read posts, I'm like, is that an AI written one? And not that it's like it's people, it's a person, but how much are they using AI and what they're putting out there? And, it may just be that the AI stuff kind of emerges here, and that's the great left field emergence, which would fit Saturn, Neptune, first degree of Aries. That it's some great new beginning at some meta level of reality that goes well beyond geopolitics. And, maybe it'll be an AI utopia, dystopia. China is a wonderful place to live, man. I've been there. You don't even need a wallet. I never carried anything when I lived there except my phone. And this was 6 years ago. Everything is on the phone. You pay on the phone. The key entries on the phone. It's all the phone. So it's just this high tech.
I would suffer in a society like that because my phone is constantly on the verge of dying, and so I'd like never have my phone charged, and so I would I would not fare well in that society.
There's chargers everywhere. You'll learn to carry your battery. I don't carry it now, but I always have my battery. But I think that's really what I see is that if we're to come back to the question, what's post Pluto and Aquarius? What's post Neptune and Aries? What's post even this decade, Uranus and Gemini? And you get Saturn, you get Uranus and Cancer, Saturn and Cancer. That's like the new home. That's the transits of the end of the 1940s. That all returns in the early 2030s in our timeline. And I just think there's, it's like this utopia dystopia with AI. And it's the other thing about where I live, he's calling it the eye, and they're fully embracing complete AI surveillance. He goes, yep, we've got the eye, crime is going to go away.
Wow.
And so I
Wow.
think, and this is like China. So this is already
Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
All of this is already in China. So the West is adopting some of this stuff too. I don't know if you've seen
Yes.
some of the dystopian kind of control with so I think that the AI dystopia utopia story is a high candidate for like how this stuff resolves. And you need a crisis to implement this stuff legally, the legal will to get legislation to implement this, and especially
Yeah.
in Western democratic countries. A crisis is perfect to do it. Anyhow,
Yeah, yeah.
just ranting and ranting here, but yeah.
But yeah, no, we can all envision the AI horror world where your sex bot is like, hey, you've not taken your government prescribed antidepressants yet today. We're gonna have to dock your points so you can't have any sugar unless you take the pill. You know,
Yeah.
that's absurd, but
No,
it kind
it's
of
not.
not really.
It's not. I mean, Medicare in America is similar. You can't get treatments unless it's on the government. They've completely data-ified, coded that through data what's allowed and what isn't allowed for treatment. So employing AI tech against that already existing architecture, what you described sounds tame. I mean, what if you have an embedded injectable and you can't take it out of your skin? And that's all run by a
Yeah,
government
yeah.
AI database, So, I mean, these are extreme scenarios, but that would definitely be pacifying. You don't need war in a world where you just got everybody connected to the AI. Pluribus, are you watching that show on?
I have not seen it.
Okay.
No.
Check it
I
out.
should. All right.
Check it out. I highly recommend it for everybody because of let's just put it into the specifics of the astrology, a perfected trine between Pluto and Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini this July. And I think it's triple pass.
Mm-hmm.
Like this kind of tech dystopia, utopia is front and center this year with aspects. It's front and center over the next 8 years. And it's front and center really to the 2040s. And, it might sound extreme, but we're going to play this back in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It's like, whoa, this is exactly what we're all having to make decisions around. We saw it with the Aquarius pileups, Saturn in Aquarius, Jupiter in Aquarius, 2021. This is the exact conversation. Does the
Yeah.
government get access to your biology? And
Well,
what are the rules around that, right?
one thing before we go to comment on that is that so the pandemic, right, took place during the Saturn Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius. That was like more or less when the vaccines came out, right? And the opposition to that is going to occur in 2029, at the end of 2029, beginning of 2030. That's when we're going to have the opposition. And that if anyone is involved in conspiracy theory circles, they'll know that the year 2030 has been bandied about by quite a few people for quite a long time for all of these kind of things that we are talking about with the, World Economic Forum and surveillance capitalism and all of this stuff. So, that's quite a suspicious timing for the culmination, because at the opposition of Jupiter and Saturn, you would expect to see the full moon moment, the culmination of what began at the Saturn Jupiter conjunction.
Yeah, and
So,
just some
yeah.
quick thoughts because I see in a chat, Nari, y'all bumming me out now. I want to just let's pivot this a little bit, just
Yeah,
because
yeah. We can answer some of the chat questions. You want to do
yeah,
that?
and then we can wind down here. But I just wanted to say this was that opposition. It's a quadruple pass. First of all, that Saturn Jupiter opposition, and it's in 2029 and into 2030 quadruple pass. It's going to be really interesting to see what that brings. But that's a really important pivot, because not only is the aftermath of that Saturn in Cancer, Uranus in Cancer, which is the kind of resolutory energy of whatever crisis it is that we're about to enter into. But it's look at the last 20-year cycle. And this is a fascinating study for anybody. Saturn and Jupiter, they conjoin, and then they conjoin 20 years later. And then you get the midpoint. Go back to the idea of midpoints. You get the midpoint at 10 years in. And War on Terror, death of Osama bin Laden, the narrative around that, which a lot of people don't believe, but it was a clear shift from the Bush phase of War on Terror to the Obama phase of it, which was like ISIS and more like
Yes.
clandestine. And it was a clear
Yeah,
demarcation point.
drone bombing instead of
Yeah.
troops on the ground, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
And then you got the conjunction, and now that was totally over. No one talks about the war on terror. It's more about like Russia, China, and the war in Ukraine, and Taiwan. It's like it's a whole different set of geopolitical and AI, and so that cycle will definitely, in my view, shift us into something way different than what we're in now. And maybe that, and we pray, right? And this is to come back to y'all bumming me out now, and Ari. I know. Look, when as astrologers, you kind of take an honest look at this stuff. You have to kind of peek into to it all, and it does sometimes sound a little bit fear. There's a little bit. It can be fear triggering, but the reality is that's not going to be everybody. Most of the time in history, when you have these great moments, you can read the books, and most people are not affected by it directly. It's business as usual in most places in the world. Even World War II, which was the war that had most American GIs involved in its history, it's like something like 95% or something is just like you're going to go get your milk and your coffee and go to work. And I mean, now your work may be assigned a government output for the war or something, but the reality is it's probably for most of us going to feel very much the same.
Yeah.
Meaning that we have opportunities to do whatever you want to do. This is a great opportune time to use the technologies or to create or to participate in public discourse of like, Flower Power, 1967, get out there, share your voice.
Yeah.
There's a very much an empowering side to all of this that we will have great access to everyone for whatever your goals are. Okay. And so I think I'm very optimistic and about reality in general because I think humans can win the day, and the
Yes.
power of love is so powerful it kind of beats back evil or something like this. To sound
Yes.
very cliche here, but
Well, no, but it's important to remember that we are alive during this really historical moment, and to be grateful to bear witness to it, because it's something that is going to impact humanity for going forward for centuries. Like my grandfather is in his 90s, and he was a kid during World War II. He told me that at the time it was happening, he had this awareness like, this is the craziest shit I'm ever going to see in my entire life. And this is going to change the world completely. Right? And he says, I think that your generation is about to have a similar thing happen. He's like, maybe I'll be around to see it, maybe I won't, but I think it's coming. And so that's the kind of perspective I think it's important to remember, is that, even if it's terrible, we need to pay attention so that there can be someone afterwards to tell the tale and set the record straight.
yeah, straight up. So, all right, well, maybe that's a good stopping place. I'd love to we could go on for hours and hours,
Yes,
right? You can
we
see how
could.
animated we get,
Could.
and there's just so much to talk about. But I think
Yes,
maybe we can.
you've had a strict timeline. You got to go. I
Yeah,
understand that
yeah, yeah.
completely.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry we did not get to a bunch of the comments in the chat, but maybe I can answer some of those after SJ goes. Thank you for joining me, SJ. It has been a pleasure to do this with you. Great astrologer. If you want to book a reading with SJ, I've currently closed my books so that I can focus more on other things, but you can check him out at sjanderson144.com. Book a reading with him there. He's a great astrologer. Highly recommend him. And yeah, any parting thoughts you want to give?
No, just good to be with you and reconnect, because I know we were talking about doing this after the election show that we did. So I'm happy to get this. Felt like a good time to do it, and it's great to just keep the conversation going. And no, everybody, just hang on out there. Be positive. Get your affirmations. And think about your own world. A lot of times, the mundane is just a metaphor for our own lives. And if you just think about a time of great change and new reorganization at some deeper levels, like this is what I'm saying. Like, think about how this might be a metaphor for your own little dramas and stories and contexts. And starting things new, stepping into new power. This is all evoked here by the Aries archetype and the Aquarian archetype, which is innovations and new breakthroughs and all of it. So just a final parting note around encouragement. And I'm an advocate, mental health, spiritual health. If you want some technology to get through this, start praying, start meditating, go to the gym. I mean, I sound, this is the stuff I do, all right, to stay sane. So we've got
No,
tools to stay
it's
sane.
important though. It's important though, because if you don't like find something to center yourself during this crazy time, you're going to just crash out and have a terrible time. You're going to lose it.
Yeah.
Right. So prayer, routines, those are going to be even more important going forward. It's very important to highlight those. So yeah, but would love to have you back on the show again, maybe later this year after if what we said comes to pass. Maybe in a few months we'll have to get back together and do an update. But
Happily,
yeah, thanks.
happily.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, SJ. And I know it's late over there in Albania, so have a good day. And thank you so much, man. Appreciate
Okay,
it so
peace to
much.
you. You guys have a great one. Thanks, Alex. Take care.
All right, thank you. Bye. Okay, SJ's gone. Before I go, I wanted to. So the presentation I gave earlier, I put some links in the description of the YouTube video from at Astrology, who is a teacher of mine, someone I have a lot of respect for and have learned quite a bit from. You can find the mundane techniques that I use today on the show in those links in the description of the program. So yeah, if you're curious about the mundane techniques, check out the links and follow that account. It's really good. Let me go through some of the comments. Someone says, intuitively felt I must come and the stream is up. Yay. Yeah, we started right on time. This is like, I think the first stream I've ever done that started right on the moment it was supposed to. Let's see what else. I have to travel February 19th to 21. I've been scared because it's eclipse season. Honestly, traveling during eclipses, not that big a deal. I've traveled during lots of eclipses. I've done lots of shit during eclipses. I mean, maybe if it's like affecting your chart really badly, then it's not the best time for a vacation. I have had vacations where under shitty transits where it's turned out to be a hassle. I took one notorious vacation to Tampa one year. God, that was fucking terrible. I was going through a terrible Pluto transit, and the person I was married to at the time, we ended up there was just this huge fight, and it was so awful. So the traveling under bad transits can suck, but just because it's an eclipse, I don't necessarily think that is a consideration. Someone says the carrier should be arriving in the days I saw earlier. That would be on the 23rd in 5 days. Yeah, we're in a lull right now, but I think it's going to heat up January 24th, 25th, right in there. Someone says, what about the sun exposing the full extent of Khomeini's orders on protesters, full scale exposed? I mean, that has sort of been exposed already, I would say. I mean, there's some pretty gnarly videos coming out of what's happening to the protesters. So it's out there. Maybe it will get more attention. Maybe not. Maybe the United States will use that as a justification to get involved. I don't know. Someone says the Olympics are starting during that time too. Yeah, I always forget about the Winter Olympics. Honestly, it's like the shit Olympics, isn't it? Right? It's like no one really cares. Although, honestly, I like the Winter Olympics more. I mean, I always like watching the skiers. I mean, but my favorite with the Olympics is the gymnastics, and that's the Summer Olympics. So yeah, the gymnastics is awesome. I love gymnasts. They're so cool. Someone says, so I wonder how tensions will be because it's a kind of a very nationalistic period, people supporting their countries. I mean, yeah, so that's the thing, is that you're gonna see an increasing tension between, I mean, because there's basically like, the right in this country right now is this ultra nationalist kind of stance, and then the left has been this like anti-empire, almost anti their own country stance, right? So I think that divide's just going to continue to grow. Oh yeah, in the previous chart, Uranus was conjunct the moon too in the transit circle. Yeah, so what this person is talking about here, if we go back to the presentation, Uranus is conjunct the moon. Yeah, this is, I selected this because Uranus is about to station direct and the moon conjuncts it. The moon also crosses a midpoint here. It crosses the apsidal axis and the nodal axis on this day. And so this is a trigger day. So in addition to the Mars-Pluto conjunction happening on this day, we also have a quarter moon phase that crosses the apsidal axis and the nodal axis on the same day, which makes this as a trigger day. So of the days that I selected from that January 25th to February 8th time period, January 27th and February 1st, probably the most likely for a trigger. Someone says Uranus is currently transiting the US stock market. Sun/MC2, it's going to station right on it. That's really interesting. I wonder what chart you're using for the stock market. I'll have to look that up. That's very interesting. Unfortunately, I do not know what geopolitical commentators SJ follows. However, I will tell you what ones I follow. I really like James Corbett from the Corbett Report. I am also a fan of Glenn Greenwald. Yeah, who else do I like? Yeah, James Corbett, Glenn Greenwald. Those are two big ones I like. Glenn is hilarious. I love how snarky he is. It's amazing. All right, so let's see. What other questions? They just assassinated the leading researcher for cold fusion. I have not heard of that. I'm going to have to look that up. Okay, let's see. Any other comments? Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, you guys are very welcome. You guys are very welcome. All right, I think this is most of the substantial questions that I could get to. I'm going to go ahead and jump off of here because I had a really, really rough night. I could not sleep at all. I was trying. I tried every technique that normally gets me right to sleep, and I just could not do it. I was literally up until 9 a.m. this morning. I slept from like 9:30 until like 1:30 p.m. It was fucking terrible. So I am not doing well, and I'm going to jump off of here. But hopefully, I'm going to be. Someone says it's so weird seeing you alone. I know, I hardly ever do these streams alone, but maybe I'll do them more by myself and just kind of just go like because I'm not doing readings right now. I wanted to have some time to go down into these rabbit holes, and so there's every week there's a new rabbit hole I have. So I may just go live by myself for 30 or 45 minutes just to show you guys my latest techniques, my latest things that I'm doing. And yeah, thank you, Inari Chan. You're so sweet. Aw. Hope you're doing well. It's been a while since we've chatted, but I remember you, and I hope you're doing good. So yeah, that's it for me. I'm signing off. This has been Alex Harper. Thanks again to SJ Anderson and also Yotir Astrology for all of his steadfast work and assistance with the tradition. So yeah, that's it for me. Have a good one, guys. I'll talk to you soon.